This program is a report of the manhunt conducted for prison escapees Claude Eugene Dennis and William Lancaster. We have attempted to recount the events from their escape at the state penitentiary in Lancaster to their death in a shootout with Highway Patrol personnel in Caddo, Oklahoma. The crime scenes were reconstructed by using photographs, statements of witnesses, and physical evidence. Portions of the program are excerpts of TV news accounts.
Michael Lancaster, 25 years old, convicted of 2 counts of armed robbery, escaped imprisonment twice. Claude Dennis, 35, serving time for first-degree manslaughter, escaped twice from the Stevens County Jail. On April 23rd, Dennis and Lancaster made another escape, this time together from the McAllister State Prison. The convicts used a utility tunnel to go under the walls. The 2 men then stole a prison guard's car, guns, and ammunition. For the next 34 days, they would be traced by a trail of occasional sightings, stolen vehicles, and bodies. 6 days after they escaped, a 26-year-old man was killed near Farmersville, Texas. His car and fishing equipment were stolen. The fishing gear was later found at a campsite along the Red River, believed used by the escapees. On the night of May 2nd, a Garland, Texas gas station attendant was robbed and murdered. A witness identified Michael Lancaster as the killer. May 5th, a 57-year-old Hemphill, Texas man left his home to take some trash to a nearby dump. He never returned. His body was discovered more than 3 weeks later. May 11th, in Denison, Texas, a bait shop operator was shot to death, his wife kidnapped. She later freed herself and identified Lancaster and Dennis as her abductors. That night, a man identified as Lancaster was seen in Mill Creek, Oklahoma. By the following morning, a manhunt was underway south of Roth, near the Pontotoc-Murray County line. Searchers using dogs fanned out over the area, trying to pick up the trail of the escapees. A stolen car, believed taken by the fugitives in Denison, had been found abandoned behind a barn. During the night, a pickup was stolen several miles from where the car had been left behind. Authorities estimated Dennis and Lancaster may have had at least a 10-hour head start. The trail was cold. The manhunt called off. 4 days later, and hundreds of miles away, the hunt resumed when a police officer in Butler, Alabama was wounded. The suspects, Claude Dennis and Michael Lancaster. The following day, the 2 men are believed to have fired at an Alabama state trooper, but missed. 1 week later, a month to the day after the convicts escaped, the body of a 68-year-old woman was found in her home near Cuba, Alabama. Her throat had been slashed. A massive manhunt for Lancaster and Dennis began along the Alabama-Mississippi border.
Because of his knowledge of the method of operation of the 2 escapees, Lieutenant John Haney was sent to Alabama by Chief Horton to assist them in their hunt for Dennis and Lancaster.
I arrived at their command post on Monday at about 11 p.m. and oriented them to all the information that we had on Dennis and Lancaster and assisted them throughout the next 3 days in their search for them. Lieutenant Pat Grimes assisted me, as well as Lieutenant Bob Shaw and troopers in the McAllister area, securing information during this time that we did need, such as fingerprint, weapons information, ammunition information, and so on. I stayed at the Alabama-Mississippi Command Post, which was just inside Mississippi state lines, till the evening of the 24th, when I was notified by a dispatcher from Ardmore that the vehicle we had been searching for was found near Fort Washita.
The stolen car was discovered about 75 yards off a back road in a wooded area. It was apparently ditched with the belief it would not be found for days or even weeks. But The vehicle was discovered within about 12 hours from the time the escapees left it.
Lieutenant Mike Williams went to the scene of the abandoned vehicle to establish a positive identification.
I was at the Durham headquarters. We received a call at approximately 8:05 p.m. on May the 24th from Mr. Douglas Colbert. He advised that a Mr. Baylock had came to his residence and reported finding a yellow station wagon hidden in the bushes near Kansas Creek across from Fort Washita. I answered this call, and at approximately 8:30 I arrived at this location and found the vehicle. It had no tag on it. I got the VIN number and ran it through NCIC. At 8:45 I got a reported stolen report back on this vehicle. This vehicle's from Livingston, Alabama, involved in a homicide, and the suspected suspects was Dennis and Lancaster. At this time, I notified Lieutenant Flanagan, and we started setting up roadblocks immediately.
Lieutenant Flanagan assumed command of the manhunt situation. The following morning, as the search intensified, including personnel from other troops, Captain Van Arsdale was placed in charge.
The roadblocks and the roving assignments that we had maintained throughout the night were still held and expanded to a certain degree. The areas, as more units arrived, the areas assigned to a unit was narrowed down and gave them a smaller area to patrol. We had 2 teams of dogs, one from Lancaster, one from McLeod. During this first night, there was nothing of any significance really happened as far as sightings, reported sightings, stolen cars, or anything of this nature, except one incident was reported down in Grayson County, Texas. And this pulled our command personnel, night command personnel, and SWAT team, and other officers down there to check this out. And it didn't pan out as being anything important. The Friday morning, when I arrived back at the command post, we were still of the opinion that they had to be in the area. We had to operate on this assumption because no vehicles had been stolen, no one had reported seeing them, so we were certainly not thinking about scaling down the operation at this time, but rather holding what we had and utilizing people as they showed up on the scene. So during the early morning hours of Friday morning, this is what we did. We maintained our outer perimeter blocks, we maintained our roving units, and emphasized cruising the county roads more at this time.
This is the location that the car from Alabama was found abandoned. Its relationship to where the CP was established at Fort Washita. From Wednesday evening until Friday morning, throughout this area, roadblocks were maintained and roving patrols. But the next confirmed sighting of the pair came Friday morning at the Russell Washington place, shown here, which is approximately 10 miles east of the site that the car was abandoned. Russell Washington recounts what happened at his place that Friday morning north of Durant.
There's something wrong up there. There's either somebody been there and gone, or there's somebody in there now. And he said, oh, there's nobody in there. And so he said, come on, let's just go up there and see. So we just turned around, came back up here and walked in. And when we got to the kitchen, he went straight ahead in the living room, and I turned right into the bedroom. Well, he just walked right into them. They were standing on either side of the living room door. And he said, hi, boys, how you doing? And they said, all right, how you? And they said, tell that old boy in there to throw that gun down and come on in here. And he said, Russ, throw it down, come on in here, they got us. And I just threw the gun down there on the bed and said, Lord help us, and just turned around and walked into the kitchen.
and they came out through the door, and Buzz in front of them. They said, lay down on the floor, boy, so we're going to have to tie you up. And anyway, they fired up in a minute and took on off down the road. And when I could tell that they were going and weren't stopping and backing up or anything, because I was scared that there was somebody going to start down that road coming in here and they might back up on us. But nobody did, and they went on down the road, and I started trying to get loose, and they hadn't tied me tight enough. Dennis told Lancaster not to tie me so tight to cut the circulation off. And I managed to slip my right hand out and get my pocket knife out, and I cut myself loose and jumped up to see where they were. And then I grabbed the telephone, and I was sitting at the table looking out the window at them when I was on the phone when they got to the highway.
The pair traveled away from Washington's place on a county road and north on Highway 48. They were aware that the roadblock established by the Highway Patrol was still in existence at Highway 22 and 48. They traveled back to the east on a county road toward Caddo. At the same time, Trooper Summer and Trooper Young were hurriedly traveling west toward Highway 48 on the same county road, as recounted by a witness to that event, Mrs. Joins, whose residence is located here.
Then came to the door and said a patrol car had gone slowly east. And about 3 or 4 minutes later, he came back in and said that it had gone back west at a high rate of speed. He estimated about 50 miles per hour. And in about 2 to 3 minutes, we had gotten back outside. I went out this time with them, and we began hearing some firing, some shooting from west of our house. We walked out towards the road, all except my younger son, Randall, who climbed up on top of the house, the 2-story, hoping that he could get a better view down that way. We were out near the road when we heard the shooting. It went on for approximately 2 minutes, 3 maybe, and my husband estimated around 24 shots were fired.
After Trooper Young and Trooper Summers passed the joined place, traveling west on the county road, they met the subjects at approximately this location in front of the Haggerty and Renfro residence. The scale drawing represents the scene at Kennefic. The patrol car stopping approximately here, the pickup facing him stopping approximately here. A second factor that proves that Trooper Summers and Trooper Young were aware they were looking for a blue pickup containing Dennis and Lancaster was the fact that they stopped the patrol unit some 80 yards east of the pickup as they met on the county road. Trooper Young moved out of the left side of Victor 54 and assumed a position to the south and west of the unit, approximately 35 feet from the left front. Trooper Summers assumed a cover position behind the right door of Victor 54. At this point in time, Dennis and Lancaster were apparently still in the pickup truck. The passenger, probably Lancaster, fired 1 round of double-aught buck from a sawed-off shotgun from somewhere near the right door. The spent round you've already seen in the review of the evidence. As this round was fired, Trooper Young fired 4 rounds from his shotgun. Trooper Summers fired 1 round of .30-30 caliber from a rifle behind the door. This drove Dennis and Lancaster from the pickup truck, and they assumed a position very similar to what is shown here and returned fire on Victor 54. This firing caused Trooper Young to retreat to approximately this location, apparently to reload his shotgun. As the incoming round struck the door glass and windshield of Victor 54, apparently the glass struck Trooper Summers in the forehead, eyes, and left side of his face. This is the position that Trooper Young and Trooper Summers were found in after the shooting. The sequence of events and how they occurred after Trooper Summers was struck in the face with the glass from the windshield and door are somewhat vague. But from an evidence standpoint, we feel they occurred something like this. Trooper Summers turned toward the rear, dropping his .30-30, removed his glasses in an apparent attempt to clear his vision, and was struck in the upper left back with a round. At approximately this same time, Trooper Young, still attempting to load his shotgun, either looked around the right side of the car to check on the condition of Trooper Summers, or was looking down the road in an attempt to see where Dennis and Lancaster were when he was struck in the upper left forehead with a round. He fell backwards, apparently still had a live round in his hand, which rolled under the car to this location. At this point in time, Trooper Summers leaned into the car, using the radio, called the CP, saying, "This is Victor 54. We have them and we've been hit." As this was occurring, Dennis and Lancaster got back into the pickup and moved slowly up the road, the passenger firing at the patrol car as they approached. They stopped the pickup in approximately this location. Apparently knowing that they had wounded the trooper in the front seat, they fired through the windshield, attempting to strike Trooper Summers. When this failed, the driver, probably Dennis, moved up the north side of the road and fired a round of double-aught buck, striking Trooper Summers under the right arm in the side of his chest. He slumped forward into the seat in the position you find here. After taking his service revolver, Trooper Young's service revolver, and Trooper Young's shotgun, they got into the pickup and drove east toward Caddo. Just east of the Joins place, they were picked up for the first time by a patrol airplane being piloted by Lloyd Basinger.
And at that time, I had advised them that we had spotted the blue Ford pickup and its direction of travel, and I asked for any units in the vicinity of Caddo. I didn't direct that first conversation, I don't think, to any unit or even to the CP, knowing that everybody could hear me. I thought that could get it out like that, we could get more response if we just asked for anybody in the Caddo area. I got numerous responses from people that were in or going toward that area, because I think everybody from roadblocks that were remote from that location had started to move with the permission of the CP. I observed one white and black station wagon on the curve on Highway 22 at the west edge, or 3/4 of a mile west of the little town of Caddo, and just calling blank to the unit that was on Highway 22 to acknowledge. I didn't get any response on 3 or 4 calls. About the 4th time I called, Lieutenant Hughes in Zebra 22 responded that he was in Caddo westbound.
We told Lloyd
that this was Zebra 22, and he called me by name and said, turn around, Hoyt, turn around. They're south of you on the county road. They're going to come into Caddo in a residential area, south of 22. So I turned around.
They turned around, traveled back into Caddo. As the subjects turned south for a block and back east for a block. Lieutenant Grimes and Lieutenant Hughes traveled to Choctaw Avenue and traveled south, again paralleling the subjects and a little bit behind them. The subjects traveled another block south. Lieutenant Hughes and Lieutenant Grimes were proceeding south on Choctaw Avenue. When the suspects reached Court Street, they again turned back to the east. Lieutenant Grimes, at that point in time, taking instructions from the airplane, they felt like that they would intersect the subjects at this point. However, the subjects turned back north in a driveway between the first two houses.
And just before we got to the intersection, about a block away, he said, they're turning into the drive. They're turning into the drive. As we reached the street that they turned off of into a private driveway and just cleared the houses, we could see the blue pickup just coming to rest or just stopped. And I said, there's the truck, Pat. As we proceeded to make our turn around the corner almost immediately, I said, there's one of them standing at the front. He was in the vicinity of the right front fender, standing and moving around slightly. As we started on down the street, I observed small children, too, running up the street towards us. It felt like that they thought, well, there's a fire truck coming. They were going to run and see the fire truck go by, and we thought, oh my God, the kids will get hurt. And we knew that we had to get down there and keep them from getting into a residence, taking hostages or whatever. We had them on the ground and in a particular spot, and we had to hold them there. I proceeded on down the street and stopped with my back bumper close to the vicinity of the left side of the pickup. I was in the road, they were up in the drive, but my back bumper would have been almost even with the left side of the pickup. As we stopped, I observed the subject raise up beside the pickup or the big tree and put a long gun to his shoulder. I reached around Pat. We had the windows up. Pat had his AR-15 in his lap. And I reached around Pat and fired once or twice through my window. And then the window exploded and came back in on us. And we both was either knocked over by the concussion or ducked back to our left, possibly both. And raised back up. Pat stuck his gun out the window, and I heard it go off, and I reached around Pat with my pistol and fired a few more rounds. About that time, they hit Pat. Hit him in the head with evidently a slug, bowed him into me and across my lap. I finished discharging my weapon until it was empty out the window. Tried to reload it and couldn't unsnap the extra clips I had under my right arm, evidently because my thumb was broke. At this time, I got out of the unit, reached in and pulled Pat's gun from his lap, and went to the back of my unit and emptied it.
And as looking over that patrol car of Lieutenant Hughes into the brush, I observed the 4 or 5 shots of a gun blast that come out of the dark shadows of the area in front of the pickup. I immediately reported on the radio that we had gunfire and to call an ambulance. I then directed a couple of other units in. By that time, Mike Williams had come on down and positioned himself. There was 2 other cars that had came in, the station wagon that was on the curve west of Caddo on 22, and another patrol car. I don't know who was driving that car, was already in, and Lieutenant Williams come on the scene. He passed those 2 cars and stopped his car just in front of them a little bit.
Okay, as I reached this location, Zebra 22 is in the location that it's in now. I noticed one of the suspects standing south of the bushes behind the pickup. This subject was armed with a sawed-off shotgun. I could see debris or smoke still in the air. And as I got out of the patrol unit, came out with my rifle and was taking up a position. As I was taking the position, the subject ran back into the bushes and Zebra 22 pulled off down to the corner. As he did this, I closed the door on the unit and was moving up, taking a better position, and was watching for some sign of movement around the pickup area. A second or two passed, caught a glimpse of Hoyt Hughes coming up the street back towards the pickup with an AR-15. As he got in position about even with the driveway on this side of the street, gunfire started again, and it lasted just for a few seconds. The gunfire ceased. I noticed one of the subjects move in front of the pickup. He staggered and he fell. I took a bead on this subject, and he was moving like he was trying to crawl but couldn't. And then I noticed the other subject came around the pickup in a crouched position. He was armed. He looked like he was watching Hoyt Hughes, who was still out in the street. Then he checked Lancaster. He took 2 steps back and stood straight up, looked at Hoyt Hughes again, and turned and looked in my direction. Then he went back down in a crouched position, bringing the shotgun up. At this time, I took aim and I fired 3 to 4 rounds. The subject staggered.
Training 98, training 20, north 71.
And he was turning, and as he was staggering and turning, I fired 4 or 5 more rounds, and the subject went down. I paused here behind the car for a few seconds, then I advanced toward the tree, which was directly in front of the house on the west side of the road, on the north side of the road. Both suspects were still on the ground. One of them was still moving slightly, turning, was looking at me. He was trying to put his hands up, was unable to do so. He'd raise them and they'd fall. The other man had not moved yet. By this time, the other trooper had moved up to here. One trooper was back over here behind this shrub. Then I moved up to the subjects, on top of them, to a location right here. Lancaster, the one that was wounded, was laying right here with his head facing down this way. The other suspect, which was Dennis, was laying in a relationship approximately right here. Both subjects were down on their bellies. We rolled both subjects right quick, pulled the shotgun out from under Dennis. We cuffed him. We cuffed Lancaster, moved the shotgun, which was laying on his left side, rolled him, and pulled a .357 out of his belt. At this time, Lieutenant Hoyt Hughes came up here where we were at. Hughes was wounded. He had blood on his face, his chest, and his arm, and I got Hughes and checked him right quick, and he didn't appear to be injured seriously. So by this time there were several troopers here, and I got 2 of them and told them to stay with Hughes and to check him out and to seal this area off and let nobody else in this area right now. But I'm going back to get some ambulances. And I went back to the unit and called Durant and advised them that we needed some ambulances at Caddo at this scene, that we had 1 trooper down and both suspects were down. Then they advised they were okay. And while I was doing this, the troopers brought Hoyt Hughes over to my unit, opened the door and set him in the unit, and then I told them, I said, check and get this area sealed completely off, get the entire block completely sealed, allow no people in. Our people sheriff's, police, or news people. We got to seal it off, preserve the scene. So I'm going to get Hughes medical attention, possibly have to take him to the hospital. As I got in the unit and started, Hoyt advised me that Pat had been hit, that Pat was dead, and I pulled up beside Zebra 22 and got out, went and checked Pat, and Pat was dead. And when I looked up, I noticed an ambulance sitting up on the corner 1 block away. I motioned for the ambulance to come down and told them what we had, and they checked Pat right quick, and then they got with Hoyt, doctored him up, loaded him up, and proceeded to the hospital. And at that time, the captain arrived, was on the scene, and I turned the scene over to the captain.
This program was compiled by utilizing information from the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation, Texas Rangers, local county and city law enforcement agencies in southern Oklahoma and northern Texas, and the Oklahoma Department of Public Safety. Portions were excerpts from Saturday Magazine, a production by KTVY, Channel 4 in Oklahoma City.